Good morning, everyone, and happy Women's Day for everyone here. Good to see that the house is almost full on a Sunday morning for a very interesting talk today by Professor Subhasis Chaudhuri, who is a distinguished academician, researcher, and an administrator. He was the director of the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, from 2019 to 2024. He's a well-renowned expert in the areas of artificial intelligence, and his research interests include signal processing, computer vision, and the field of haptics, which talks about sort of sensory input through the skin when in our interaction with electronic devices. So Professor Chaudhuri earned his BTech in electronics and electrical communication from IIT Kharagpur, then had a master's at University of Calgary and PhD from University of California, San Diego. And after that, he joined the Department of Electrical Engineering at IIT Bombay. And over the course of next few decades, he took up several leadership roles at IIT Bombay, including that of head of the department, Dean of International Relations, Deputy Director, and in 2019, he was appointed as the Director of the Institute. Professor Chaudhuri is recognized widely as a pioneer in various areas, including motion-free, super resolution, computational photography. And his research focuses is on sort of extracting high resolution information from relatively low quality visual data, something that is very important for fields like medical imaging and so on. He's credited with development of 2D match filters for detecting blood vessels in retinal images, which is sort of a technique for automated diabetic retinopathy. And he has also worked on various other areas in image recovery and image processing, and on computational haptics, as I mentioned. And despite his heavy administrative loads, he's also a well-known teacher and educator. He has guided over 33 PhD students and over 100 MTech students, many of whom are, I'm sure, now hold leadership positions in various academic and industrial settings. And his research and other contributions have been recognized through several awards and honors, including the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award, the Swarna Jayanti Fellowship, the J.C. Bose National Fellowship, and so on. And he's also is fellow of IEEE, the Indian National Science Academy, Indian Academy of Sciences, and so on. Professor Chaudhuri currently serves as the K.N. Bajaj Chair Professor of IIT Bombay, and is a public interest director on the board of the Bombay Stock Exchange. It shows that he continues to do high-level academics and also have a connect between academia and industry. And today he's going to talk about something that is all of us may be pondering about, sort of how to stay alive in a very rapidly changing academic context with various new things showing up on a day-to-day basis, starting from AI to everything else. So how to learn, how to teach, how to do research, and how to basically stay alive in this very dynamic context that we find ourselves in. So without much further ado, I'd like to invite Professor Chaudhuri to deliver his talk.
It's okay. It's okay. No, it's green. Thank you, Professor Saji. Is it okay now? Hello? 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 Is it okay? Yeah. So thank you, Professor Saji, for a very detailed, I think, CV reading. And I think I'm very thankful to Professor Murthy for inviting me here this morning. And my apologies for dragging you all on a Sunday morning here. And but hope I'm able to transfer some message during the course of this talk. And of course, today is also a very special day, it's the International Women's Day. So I show my deepest respect to all the women who are here. So congratulations to all of you. The title of my talk is, I think, Professor Murthy did not like it. He says, what is it, kind of thing. As what is this staying alive? It's more like something unusual. And then you put something under a parenthesis statement with a ... starting like this. So what is it? Okay. So I should probably explain that before I go into this. Is that, see, when I finished my PhD and I joined IIT Bombay as a faculty member, many of you are very young and some of you are students here, then we find that you switch over and you start doing, apart from teaching, your research, and then I see there's a gap, there's a stop, and I'm not able to really cope up with what's happening, okay, because maybe kind of thing that I was doing there, I started doing there on computer vision, which required data. And those days, we did not have any mobile phone or cameras where we could actually capture. So I did not have any data to start working on. So nothing was there. So most of the time at the beginning, I used to spend in one was a coffee stall, if you have seen in IIT Bombay campus. And one day I said, what the hell I'm doing? Okay, nothing is happening. So I have to stay, alive and kicking, okay, if you want. So how do you get into the business of doing research and see that you have certain kind of fulfillment in terms of what the activities that you get in. So that's the first kind of thing. And then you're saying, okay, you have already passed it that so many years ago, why is it coming like this? Then what happens is that in 2019, when I moved to our what we call main building in IIT Bombay as the director, and it's like a big institute with so much of activities, I did not have any time for really picking up something, because research is a continuous effort, so I could not read much, I could not even the number of students, my interaction went down, and you are like falling through the trough like this. And then afterwards, when the job is done, okay, so you become what is known as Punar Mushika Bhavaha, means you back into being a professor, okay, when you were earlier, whatever it is. Then you realize that, you have to do again the research. And then I find the area that I have been working on with all kind of things, okay. Things have changed. Suddenly, as if like the chair has been swept away by this wave of AI, machine learning and others that you think, and like I'm redundant, okay. So again, this same question that happened in 1990, okay, is come back in 2024 and 5, and I'm trying to go through this phase of seeing that how I stay relevant, how I keep, staying alive, okay. So that's why I said I'm looking at not from the other perspective, it's my own perspective, so maybe a little biased, okay, but as an old man always, there is some value in what old man says. Maybe there is some value to it, okay. So with that and explaining what is it, so let me see the typical day when I go to my, you see, even though I'm supposed to be a sabbatical, but I go to every day to my office, okay. And when you go to the lounge or somewhere in the coffee lounge or outside, you keep hearing things people say, right? So one is like a lamentation, people say, oh, it's AI everywhere, not a single, option to pursue, because what do I do? Particularly come from electrical engineering, and many things has been taken. So some of the faculty members like us saying, oh, this is what it is, what should I do? It's all AI, okay? No more domain knowledge, nothing is required. It's like I'm getting redundant kind of thing, right? Then you see on the other side in the corridor, so many young students, okay, walking through it and says, sir, can you float me a topic which is an AI, okay? So everybody wants some topic because I have to stay relevant. I need a job. I need to go to the higher studies, and this is the area. So there's a lot of enthusiasm there. Okay. Then, pardon my bad throat. Then you submit a paper at the end of 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. You see these comments on your on your laptop, and the reviewer has only one question to me. Okay, does it beat the SOTA, state of the art? SOTA is a new word which was never existed in our earlier life, okay? So did your method, whatever you're proposing, is it beating the SOTA? Okay, if not, it's trash, okay? It has no value, okay? Reject. So that's like another kind of thing that you get, okay? And then it's like what I said, the lost statement. Once I had a student, okay, so several years ago, okay, and this person I was asking, that he wanted to do some work, some undergraduate, very young person like some of you, here, and said, sir, give me some problem that I would like to work and on my own additional thing. So I used to okay, read this. Then once I tell him, oh, this is word to wake is a new concept coming. Why not you explain me, read and tell me. So after that, he gave a very nice presentation. He understood very well. And then he said, sir, give me another thing to do. I said, now you learned something. Why not let's work on this? And you know what he said? Okay. He said, sir, I don't want to do anything on this. Okay. I said, why? He says, at the end of my lesson, I learned that the machine has learned, but I have not learned anything. Okay. So that's the machine learning. Okay. So that's what I said is another kind of perspective people have. And I know there are students who say that. I do not want to touch this. Okay. Now, given this complicated environment where there is a positivity, there is a negativity, okay, and everywhere you read in the paper, okay, this will be redundant, some people will do, your coding will be done. So where do we live? What do we do? And the young students, you have an entire career. You have next 30, 40, 50 years. You have to stay alive, right? So to do that, let's look at the evolution of science. Okay, so looking more from the science perspective. So of course, at the beginning, there was some knowledge, people get developed, things like this, seeing is believing and kind of things, okay, those days. Then there are actually 4 paradigms. And the first paradigm that happened was more or less empirical. You observe, let's say Archimedes' principle of buoyancy and others, you see what happens, then you say, okay, there is displacement of water, what happens, things like this, people started doing it, okay. Or maybe Galileo reading some data, whatever, from this and say, okay, this is like, whether it's a heliocentric or earth-centric, whatever. You come up with your kind of thing. Later on, with the computer coming up, you say, okay, why not have a model? Okay, and they do computational kind of thing. So that's like a third paradigm. And then later on, we realize, and of course, sometimes you get some weird equation. This is an empirical equation, something x to the power, y equal to x to the power minus 2.36 and others, all kind of things you get, it has a value, okay, but you are fitting a model, okay. Now, the fourth one, which is now we are mostly into this, is the data driven. So you take all the data and learn from what is there in the data. So that's like the data paradigm, right, which currently is a major focus in many cases. And if you look at how the data evolved over time, so it's very interesting that our society is an information society, and what the people have tried to classify how the data has evolved over time. So before your 0 AD, okay, before the Christ, okay, whatever data from minus infinity in time to that time, whatever the data we have generated, that got what is the doubling time of that. So how much time it took to double that one. So it is like opposite to your radioactive decay half-life period instead of that doubling time. So it turns out the amount of data got doubled in next 1715 years. So it took that many years. Okay. Then after that, next doubling, it took something like 200 years. Okay. So then you see that you are already into the industrial revolution phase and others. There's a lot of development happening in 1950 and others. Then next doubling happened is in around 50 years. Okay. So you see the time is, your scale is shrinking. Okay. And after that, if you go further, so what they say is that by 2035, the prediction is that your doubling will happen in 6 months. Okay. So if that means, supposing I equate information is equal to knowledge, which is not correct all the time, but let's say so, because it's a data paradigm, because knowledge gets created from there nowadays with AI. So that means by the time I submit a paper to a journal and that time it gets accepted, its value gets reduced by a factor of 2. Okay. Roughly is like that's what the thing that you are going to face that in future. Okay. Luckily I will retire much before that. Okay. So that's a nice thing about me. Okay. So if the data comes like this, then what is happening? This is the second Samudra Manthan happening. Okay. Only thing that is happening, that at least in the AI field, is that churning of the data. It's no longer, and it's an ocean of data. Okay. So this, as you keep on churning the data, you get certain knowledge out of it. It could be in the process of, as a decision process, or it could be some, what you call like prediction of something, or like, what would be the share market tomorrow, or what could be like, something that you are seeing, whether you have some kind of a model, where would it lead to. So this is what we try to do, okay, nowadays. And most of the thing is that everybody has his own churning engine, okay, whether it's an OpenAI or Claude, you look at any other thing, right, Gemini, okay. So all of them are doing like this, okay. So it's all data churning. So let's look at that. So on the other hand, if you look at education, that happened because finally we are in this particular domain here. So originally, it all started with Gurukul. Okay, so you go to, so I'm talking about thousands of years ago, it started like this. Even some cases it may still continue. But from today's perspective, if I look at it, it's more like a single portfolio manager. Okay, you have one guru, okay, and what you do is that whatever the knowledge of that particular guru, you try to learn, okay, and that completes your education, right? So until probably, if you have gone through the literature of the Indian development, until Shetketu's father asked, like, your knowledge, the knowledge complete, do you know what happened over there? And they said, no, I don't know this. That means you need another guru, okay? So when that happens, right, so you go into gradually moving into what happens to what we call today as an university, okay, is where you have multiple experts, okay. You attend class 1, then next time class B, class C, whatever you need, and then you create something else, and you get diversity in expertise, and knowledge explosion takes place, because that's what it is, right? That's what the great thing that has happened to us, okay. But then with time, okay, so let's say, for example, in India before around 1947, our gross enrollment ratio was way, way below even 1%. This is nothing, okay, almost, right? Very little. So if that happens, so now you see today is about 27, 28% or something like that, right? It costs money, okay, for education. Somebody is paying for it. Let's say you have this wonderful ambience. I took a look at this, okay, this entire campus is a beautiful campus, nicely developed, with so much of facilities, okay. So somebody is paying for it, okay. It's a government institution, it's the taxpayers' money, but somewhere there could be private, there could be whatever it is, it's cost, okay. So how would you actually, so anytime you have it, you don't have infinite amount of money. You need to see that for the same amount of money, I can produce more and more academicians or students and whatever it is, right. So that's always the thing. And for that required And by the way, it was never, earlier says the education, somebody says it's like free, you don't need to, but you are not looking at that. Those days were a barter system, right? So you stay in the guru's house, okay, you work in the field, you run the cows, whether they are all of them. So that's half of your time goes into running that, right? You never put a value for that. So today, of course, we put everything in terms of monetary things. And then you see that those days it was no cheaper either, okay. So when you come to this, our job everywhere is that how do you produce more number of students, or let's say the graduates, per faculty. So I can define something like a throughput, okay. And what can be a definition? One crude definition could be number of students per graduated per faculty per year. And see how many we do. Let's say, for example, in IIT Bombay, this number could be around something like 3.5. Okay, we have around 800 faculty. We graduate about 2,600, maybe 3,000 students now. Okay, so you see that what is the thing that you are producing. Okay, you go to some of the big undergraduate places. Okay, like Ohio State University and others. Texas A&M, which are like big kind of thing. Maybe it goes up to 5 or something. And if you go like, again, few of them are very precise, like Caltech and others, maybe it's just 2 or something, like this. So people try to enhance that number, okay, to see that you get more out of the money that you have or whatever this, okay. So this online education, AI and others, it does help because you can expand this one. And you can see it's a democratization of education. It goes because finally you want everybody to get educated. It's cheaper, okay. It's self-paced, okay. And also it could be like personalized. There could be many possible things, benefits, so we'll not go into that. But these are certain things that's happening. Now, this is from one side. Then you look at the industry side, okay. So industry always need manpower. And of course, if you look at the entire society, okay, so normally our requirement happens at 3 different levels. One is at the primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. This is as per the economics, okay. So typically, primary sector, here the total, let's say your per capita output that you generate per individual workforce is typically much lower. In India is very low. See, 40% more than that are actually in the agriculture. Some of them could be in other this similar kind of things. And see how much they produce. So what's the net income level for that? See, in US, it's about 150 years ago, it was like around 60% of them into this. Today, it's less than 1.5%, and they produce more. Okay, and that means the same amount that if it goes up, okay, you can see what is the per capita income. Okay, you move to the secondary side. So basically, if you want, like let's say if you have to move to Viksit Bharat by 2047, right? So we have to move people from the primary sector to the next level. Now, what is the next level? Is you're basically manufacturing another secondary sector. Okay. And in the secondary sector, you try to bring in automation, other things, reduce manpower, things like this. That is the effect is going on. So that again, you bring in the per capita income for that level. And again, if you look at, let's say, some China and others, that is their second level, that is the income per individual at that level is definitely much higher than the first one. But again, not so much at the third level, which is the tertiary sector of the economy. Is a business, trading, knowledge creation, whatever you want to look at it. And so this pyramid, ideally, like in India, it's like this. We want in the US and others, or the developed country, it's the other way, inverted pyramid. So we have to, there is a pressure everywhere. As you develop, move people from the primary sector towards tertiary. So there is a mad rush, you have to move it there, otherwise your corresponding developmental goals gets reduced. Okay? So that's your requirement from the industry. Now, on the other side, education, if you look from our overall perspective, India has gone through many things since, let's say, something like 1835 onwards. there have been different education commissions and others, you know, and lately with NEP 2020, okay, in between there's so many of them. And similar thing happens in other countries, okay. And let's say from our perspective, in my opinion, we are always looking at the supply side dynamics, okay, not the demand side, okay. And let me explain that, okay, with example. India produces something like, you know, 1.2 to 1.5 million engineers. I'm talking about engineers, okay, from different category, predominantly IT, right? So per year, assuming a lifetime of an engineer 30, 35 years, maybe 40 years some cases, let's take 30 years to minimum, okay. So in that particular period, we have produced something like 40 to 50 million engineers over the last 30 years who should be in that workforce today, okay. Now you look at some of these industry data and saying how many IT professionals are there in India, it's around 5 to 6 million, okay, not more than that. There are other industry there which could be like, you know, another 40, and this is the largest sector. There may be another 2 to 3 million. Some of them move to some other thing, so could take 1 or 2 million, okay. Some people have migrated out of the country, maybe another 1 million you add, okay, and you add some, you know, few more. So maybe we can get to count something like 10, 15 million people, okay. Those who graduated in the last 35 years. So what happened to the rest of the 20 million people who graduated? We were trained for it. We paid for their, you know, whether they paid or the country paid, we spent that money on that education, but somehow we don't see them in the workforce, okay. So it's a lost opportunity, okay, in terms of moving them to the tertiary sector. So we look at always saying, oh, create this, so many engineering schools, so many others. Let's say in terms of management, we have too many of them, and somewhere I read that you get something like except probably the top tier institution, for rest of the graduates in MBA or whatever, only 7% of them are in the actual profession for which they were trained in as a business administrator, okay. So that means it's unnecessary cost burden. Somebody is looking into that, okay. So think about that. It's a wastage of resources, wastage of opportunities, okay. It's happening, right? So this is the demand side, and this requires the thinking is that what should be the other way of looking at what the society, what the system, what the country can absorb, okay, so that unemployment, others, or the growth that we are anticipating happens at a rate that we want to do, okay. So with that, let's look at a typical learners. So I give you a perspective, okay. Now let's take an individual, okay. So who is the individual? You can probably find out, okay. So take one individual's journey. So spent since 1980s, okay, time in learning different techniques, okay, just lead something, okay, calculus, linear algebra, PD, whatever, you know, functional analysis, you look at statistics, estimation theory, optimization theory, programming concept, what, you know, you spend time, not that everything in one day, you do it over time and you learn, okay, and then you are using it to do research, to train the new generation. That's what you do, okay. And sometimes this learning could be very productive in terms of you being very productive in creating a lot more manpower who are similarly trained or, you know, serving somewhere. Now then, suddenly it appears, okay, that you don't need anymore anything, okay. All you do is this, all you need is AI, okay. So if you, today sometimes people say, oh, I don't need anything, all just, I have to learn AI. That's what happens. So is this redundant? You know, at some point you have to think that these are all techniques. If somebody is in chemistry, you need a different kind of training. If somebody is in physics, it will be something else domain. But is that gone suddenly? Is this a big question that we ask, okay? So let's look at what is happening in AI and what happens in human being. Okay, because finally the previous one was saying more as a human one, and the second one is an engine, computational engine. Okay. So there is an interesting paper that appeared. I was looking at that. So, it's a quadrilogy, and it says there is an epistemic difference in the way things learn. Now, what is epistemic difference? It's like it's epistemic. It means a theory of knowledge. Okay, how things are learned. Okay. Now, it turns out that, see, the left one is the human judgment. That's a brain, and they have taken an example of LLM, okay, large language model that, if you look at all these Claude, others, everybody, they're built on something, a foundation model. So those of you who are in this, let's say, area, you can go through this, okay, I'll not have to go to the individually. But somewhere I put those, this is from their paper, but those blue ones is what I put it, okay. See, look at certain things, is that intuitions, okay, this is in human thing. It's not there, okay, when you go for the machine side, right. Similarly, if you, maybe I should use this. So this is intuition, right. Motivation, okay, where does it fit in LLM? Okay, it's not there, part of it. So these are, what are the differences that they are trying to bring in from there. Similarly, metacognition or error monitoring, it is a feedback, okay, that we do, which may not be there once it is learned. It's a frozen model. Sometimes there could be updation and others that happens, but it's there, right. Then the last one you see here is a value sensitive judgment, whereas here, of course, it's a probabilistic judgment, because finally, which has the highest probability, it gives you that, right. And that leads to sometime creation of what is called hallucination. It's not that the humans we don't hallucinate, we do, okay, but there also the system do. But in here, what is important is a value sensitive judgment, okay. And that means I know that there is a solution, okay, that this is what I should do, because finally you are optimizing some cost, okay. That is what the solution says. But should I do it? Because there could be a societal issue, there could be something different. I know it is not, this is the best thing to do if I want to satisfy this, but I would not do. Should I, I should take the neighbors, just go and fire them and collect it into our country. So should I do it? So human, you would not do it, right? Many times I know this is something we demand, but no, my consciousness is very clear, I should not do it, okay, which doesn't happen, okay. And sometimes people say that, like too much of negativism in terms of use of AI, saying I should not do it, because there could be some error and all. And as if we human beings don't make any mistake, right. So I go into that one, next one, see that what is the human construct into that particular one. So that was from the Western side, I am doing it from our Eastern philosophy, okay. So if you look at the Indian, the philosophy, the so-called the Vedantic philosophy. So you have this concept of universal, whatever the consciousness, okay, whatever you could call that. And we say that the human or the jiva is basically, it consists of certain inner organs. Normally it's known as antakaran, okay. And it consists of 4 faculties. One is like mind, they call it man, okay. Then intelligence, buddhi, okay. Then you have memory, is chitta, and the third, fourth one is ego, okay. All these things together, okay, and then you see whatever your kind of sensory organs, they give you the data feedback, and then you analyze this, and then you take a conscientious decision, is viveka, okay. So you take that kind of decision. If it is good, you take it, it may not, and sometimes things could go wrong, whereas in the case of your AI, basically you look at these 2 units, okay, not the other, okay. And I give you an example to make the talk a little lighter also, okay, that is the human system also malfunctions, okay, it definitely does. Let's say, for example, one of the very typical example that we read everywhere from Mahabharata, okay, is that ego, okay. So that is ahankara, right. So it's Duryodhana says, okay, that when he was asked, like, why are you doing all these stupid things, it's bad thing. He says that, Janami dharmam na cha me pravitti. I know what is the righteousness, but I have no, love for that, following that. Similarly, you say, janami adharmam, okay, nochame nibritti. I know what is not right here, what is to not be done, but I can't stay away from that. So it's like something in your mind, okay. So there are people like that, okay. I am into this kind of gambling. I'll keep on doing. I know it's bad, but I do it, okay. Similarly, memory, it fails sometimes. It happened for Karna in the right. So at crucial time, it fails. Sometimes I forget to remember some name that I want. It happens to everybody. Okay, it's not that it's a failure. Intelligence is not the same machine everywhere. Some of them are very bright. Some of them may be a little dull. Sometimes we don't talk about it, but it is everybody has different capabilities. Okay, and the last one is the mind. Okay, it's very fickle sometimes. Okay. So right now you think something, maybe next day, for the same data, I take a different decision. Okay. So it's just this kind of thing happens everywhere. It's nothing wrong. So when we tolerate human being, why can't I tolerate AI? Okay, as an output machine, right? So that's a favor. So on the other hand, if you look at the AI engine, so you look at, in case of human system, I look at the broader view and gradually keep narrowing and things like this case of Arjuna looking at only the eyes of the bird, like who to be shot. Okay. On the other hand, the machine learning also tries to see that there are a lot of things that I don't want to see it. Finally, my job is to classify whether it's a cat or a dog. I would do only that, right? So be very, very precise. Okay. So this is what I call try to see what you want to see. Okay, so that's what basically the thing that all these, the so-called deep learnings and others, they try to do it. Okay, forget about what it is. Okay, so this requires that you have a system that you have your like a kind of, this is your network architecture. The data that you feed in, this is more like what you want to see it over there, and you put kind of this kind of whatever your end-to-end learning we call it, and you can use any kind of modern techniques, CNN, transformers, whatever, BIT, everything that is allowed. Okay, you can do that. Okay, and then what happens? This whole thing, it becomes like a black box, right? Because I don't know how you're performing. It's not that I know also what I am thinking. Okay, how it happens inside. Okay, but this is what we develop. Okay, and it's a huge system. And what happens in this case? So when you look at a decision process, so there is something called manifold on which I project all my data, and then we define boundaries like this and say that any data point that comes into this, let's say classify it is like a baby. Okay, and if something is in here, then it's something different, it could be different like this, but it keeps on tweaking so much that your boundary becomes very, very, unusual boundary. And if you have a small perturbation, okay, then what happens is that it goes into the other case, and sometimes you make a drastic kind of a error, saying, oh, even though it's a human being, or like a baby, oh, it's a monkey. And then what happens everywhere in the country, it classes, oh, this particular engine has classified it as like a human, so there's a bias, there is things like this, we keep talking about it. Okay, maybe this is more coming from whether it's skin colors, so many other things people try to ascribe. Okay, but our thing is that we want to try to make it as precise as possible. Remember, your reviewer would ask, have you bit the SOTA? Okay, because of that, we keep on narrowing our boundaries. Okay, whereas human case, when we learn one thing at a time. I can always say what it is not. Okay, in machine learning and others, there is something called out of class, but always like I have n options, choose one. Okay, so it will choose one. Okay, on the human thing, say no, it's beyond that. It's none of the above. See, none of the above is not really a good option in machine learning perspective. Okay, so but it has value. Okay, it's not that if you really want to use, for example, it's very common like a spoofing. So supposing you are doing fingerprint and others based on, I don't know whether you have any biometric attendance and others, right? So I can create some kind of a spoof with some kind of a gel and others like this, and then I can come as Professor Murthy and just get all the access here. Okay. But human being may not be able to see. I give you these two cases, these fingerprints. Do you see any difference? Like you would say both look like regular fingerprints. It turns out this is fake. So can you actually find out the fake ID? Because you have trained the system and it is able to do that, okay? Which we as a human being maybe will not be able to do that, okay? So unless probably you are a really top expert, maybe you could look into that. But here I don't know how the system did it, but it learned, okay? So there is, in some sense, falsity in any kind of generative AI. It will generate like this, and there is a very nice, interesting paper. They have mathematically proved that hallucination is inevitable. That means whenever you do this kind of probabilistic decision process, okay, there will be bound to be a case where you pop up something which actually did not exist, right? And that's what you might have heard, that many judges are saying, oh, there is some kind of court cases they have referred which never happened, or they cooked up references in a paper which actually nobody published, that kind of thing. So these are all hallucinated items, okay? That's what it is called, okay? And this is going to happen. So just like, so you have to have, they say that some kind of a guardrail you need to put there. And of course, the issue would be what are the possible ways of putting the guardrails and others. We have to see that some dangerous item doesn't happen. Like for example, it happened that in a robotic workspace, they actually designed something saying that whatever it comes, it picks up and you put it in the package, okay, and it goes like for different kind of grocery store. So one particular a person who was actually handling got into that workspace, and what the robot did, it just folded the entire person, grabbed it like this and put it in the packet, okay. Imagine that so person died, okay. So this could happen, but then what is the guardrail to put in? So there could be danger. It happens in other cases also. It's not even human accident happen, but there you have to be more careful. That's all it is. So for a student now coming, so if this is the general scenario, okay, so sometimes you feel that what is the need to learn something? So I need to know only AI, that's good enough. And you may say, okay, I've learned various network architecture, and then you may say, okay, there are different types of loss function because finally it's some kind of an optimization you are doing. So learn that, and some kind of a programming skill, okay. So sometimes with the young people, you have a feeling that this is good enough, okay. If I do this, I'll have a job, I'll have, this is what people are looking at it, this is what is all that are required, okay. This is the general perspective that I see in many young people. On the other hand, for an industry, okay, if you look at what the industry wants, because this manpower fits the industry. So what do they want? They're saying, oh, coding can be done by AI. So Claude announced that something just a couple of weeks ago that, we another maybe few months or few years, okay, I don't need any kind of person to write any code. It can be done. And immediately some of these big companies, their share market came down drastically, right? You might have read that one. So if that happens, and this is where actually takes up a lot of the job in the market, then what do they need the manpower then, if everything can be done, right? So of course, they say that all you need is the creativity, okay? So you need to be creative, and that creativity, how many creative people do you need in a country, okay? You're very limited, but that's where you have to go, and that as a young student, you have to see that how you become the creative people. And then maybe they will need some security guards to do the perimeter fencing and others. There is no need for, the company will run it on its own, okay? And I heard one of the, top, I think the company, there's some of the senior person, it says like earlier, one application they were developing, okay? So it used to take like a couple of years or something, and they said that with AI and others, they did it in 1 week. Okay. So it increases the productivity. Company will naturally immediately absorb that because that's what gives them the productivity. Then what about teachers like us? Okay, so what do we want? Okay. So we always say that, look, how do we teach you the domain knowledge? Because finally, anything you build, there is on the back end, is there a domain knowledge? So even the journey is always a learning experience. New field get developed, new areas, new concept, whether it's a new medicine, new drug, new molecule, whatever, something gets developed. Okay. Do you need it? Or you do simply the churning of the ocean? Okay. So that question is there. And then sometimes we have a question, this self-belief. I mean, is domain knowledge relevant anymore? Okay. Because this is what, and I tell you what, in one case, particular case, when student comes for the project and tells me that, oh, you want to do it. So I was like, okay, what have you done before? He says, oh, we have taken this kind of data, okay, and then we processed like 2 images, and from there we could actually, one network we developed, which will give you the depth at every point in the scene. Okay. Then I said, it is a real depth or some kind of a pseudo depth that you were talking about? Like that means some kind of a relative depth. He says, no, this is actual in terms of how many meters and others. I said, I remember I taught you this course, okay, and I proved there in the class that this cannot be done. Okay. So tell me, how did you do it? Okay. Then he says, oh, yes, now that you tell me you taught it, but we are getting the results, right? It is matching with my ground truth. So this is what happens. That means what is happening? That means you basically learn with some given data, you move it to something else, it will not work. Okay. So the domain knowledge, the person missed it out completely. So that's what my point is, that then we worry that you give some kind of a specified solution that may not be relevant. In actually, you move it to something. So sometimes they have nice terms called domain adaptation and others in machine learning. But who is going to do that for you, right? So now comes the top level people who are neither the students, neither this thing. They are just outside the watchers, and they are called the AI experts. Okay, and they would make a comment like this: teach creativity. Don't teach anything, teach creativity, okay, and teach to innovate. Now tell me, last 36 years I've been a teacher. How do I teach this? Okay. So this is something as a very intrinsic for human being. Can I take any one of you and teach how to do paint like, something like some great painter? Or there you have nice architecture here, like just outside here. Can I just teach you from this thing? Is everybody can be trained like that kind of a creativity? So because this is, like why somebody like Picasso or some others are respected so much? Because there's kind of a creativity. It is some kind of an innate thing we can try to help. How to hold your, like let's say your pencil and others, okay. But beyond that, it's very difficult. Similar kind of things would be like how to innovate. See, innovation comes sometimes, and we are not talking about Zugar. We're talking about proper innovation, right? So it's not so easy, okay. It comes, there's sometimes intrinsic and sometimes, maybe you learn from others. It takes time. Musicians, sometimes some of the musicians go to the extreme, Bhimsen Joshi or somebody. Not everybody can be trained like that, okay. So there, at the same time, not being negative, look at just last week. So Knut, I don't know whether some of you heard this. He's like one of the greatest computer scientists. Okay, he's a Turing Award winner. He wrote a paper thanking Claude for solving an open math problem just last week. Okay, so he said like it was some graph theory related thing and a very highly complicated case, and say I used it and I could solve it, something which was unsolvable for a long time. Similarly, those who are in the mathematics, Terence Tao is one of the greatest mathematicians. Okay, so he clearly says that I use AI to expedite proving new mathematical theorems. Okay, so look at this. So you are talking about people who are at the extreme higher end, like a genius. So they can, of course, they make a good use of the system. It's not that it has, and when they say that some problem I could not solve so many years ago, that means there is definitely something it is doing. Okay? It's a question of how you are using it. Okay? That's very important. So that's it leaves us. So I wanted to leave you with a kind of a thought that is not that it is something not I should not touch. There are a lot of merits in it. But at the same time, there is a lot of merit in terms of, let's say, when Terence Tao grew up, got his Field Medal, he did it purely on the domain knowledge. Okay, that's why people respected him. Knuth was like that also. Similarly, there are other people, right? So that's why then their productivity goes up. Now they will probably in normal time, if you prove 5 theorems in a year, or maybe one theorem in 5 years, now maybe you could do it the other way, 5 theorems in a year. Okay, so you look at this, that improves. So I'll not take much, but this is probably my summary of everything, is that, I mean, what is the way ahead? You know, things is there. We have to look at it. Education has gone through this so much of change, everything. So there is one is so far, our knowledge acquisition system, usage, everything depended more on the domain knowledge. Okay. But now, from the data churning perspective, you get this AI knowledge. That's another thing. Okay. And both of them are important. Okay. You cannot neglect one. That's what my thing. So we have to define curriculum and others, you know, like this, as have to have both. Okay. Some mix of this. You should, I think, in any discipline that you need, whether it's a basic sciences or applied sciences, okay, or even maybe some other areas, okay, you need this. Okay. And you need to put them together, and so that becomes something useful. And so you have an appreciation for both sides and understand what the results are getting. But personally, okay, because we, you know, all of us, we are like Senate chairman, with this education, whatever the curriculum you do, it comes there. My personal thing with this is that, you know, you are trying to get married to different things. Okay. One is AI and the other is a domain knowledge. Domain knowledge evolves at a much slower rate. See, earlier we used to say it's going very fast. Okay. Of course, definitely your knowledge, number of papers, everything goes up. But AI is going even much faster than that, right? So typically, a system like those who, if there are anybody who looks at the system theory, this problem is known as a, you know, multiple time scale problem. So you have something which is basically a mixture of 2 time scale process. Okay? One is a slow changing, imagine one like this, and on the top of that you have something changing very fast. Okay? That's your AI, and that will keep on changing, because see, we have not come to a level where it is more or less stable that, okay, we don't expect so much anything, it will be like delta sigma only above this. It may not happen, it may happen also at some point. But as of now, this is a fast changing method. So we need like good academicians, industry people, others, you know, those who are experts on AI, to probably sit down and think that one is how to create such kind of curriculum so that our workforce, like you who are sitting here, you find that you have to last for next 35, 40 years. It will be a useful thing, and you keep on catching up on the first thing also, apart from on the domain knowledge. So I think that's where is a big problem, and I think hopefully next 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, this is something that we should work on that. So thank you so much for your listening attention.
Thank you, Professor Chaudhuri, for that wonderful talk. So we have another program also scheduled in this room, but we have time for a few quick questions. So questions?
You know, it looks as though I have taken the microphone first. There will be too many questions. Thank you for an excellent lecture. You know, last June, we had a convocation speaker, Manjul Bhargava, and he said that is last June, 90% of all questions in the UG exam at Princeton in all subjects can be answered to a large level by one of these programs. Yes, and then he said in another 10 months, that means by next month or the month after, this will become 99.9%. And he put an open question which you are putting. What do we teach now in the courses? I think we all have to really think what exactly has to be taught. But it's necessary. You explained the problem. Can you give a little more hint as to what is the direction that we have to take in each subject, in some guesswork at least?
So I think it's a very tough question in terms of, because we don't really know the solution. But I have, this kind of thing people have said that, even JEE exam, like advanced JEE, people have solved, so much in other things. Now tell me, I'm little, so it comes with a certain negativity from there, but I would say I'm little more on the positive side, okay. Let's say I am writing this exam and Professor Murthy is also writing the same exam, okay. What is my problem, okay, if Professor Murthy does so well, okay, and if I am also able to do it well, where is the problem? So if the system does the thing, your automation, whatever it is, if they do it, okay, so it has certain value within that system. So we'll have to be used for proper purpose. See, anything has like a nuclear bomb, it has, or something, it has some good usage, some bad usage. So many times people use it as a bad usage. I said, okay, instead of I writing that exam, okay, let me get impersonated by Claude or whatever it is and let them write. Then of course it's fraud and I'm not doing. But there could be certain cases, like as I gave that example, like Manjul Bhargava, this Terence Tao is another field medalist in the same, and they're appreciative of that, right. So that's one thing I'm saying, that I'm not negative. If they do it, that means we are getting certain kind of maturity in terms of what AI can generate. On the other hand, from our side, as we said, that's what I wanted to bring in the perspective from the students as well as from this. So at a young age, sometimes we are looking more from immediate benefit of, I want to read a subject or something, and immediately I want to say that this is what I should get benefit out of it. And probably you see that if I do AI today, I get immediate benefit, but maybe domain knowledge and others, it's a slow process, even though your foundation is built on that. So it needs careful kind of, I would say, going back to the student, the younger generation, that yes, of course you should learn AI, use it AI, but at the same time don't neglect the foundational subjects, okay, whatever is your discipline, and that will give you a better benefit in the long run rather than a short term. See, this example people have tried. It's not like, and I think once IEEE had a very interesting curve I've seen, in many years ago, okay. They said that whether you should study higher education or you should be a truck driver, okay. And they had a curve that if you are initially in US, the truck drivers were getting a lot more salary, okay. But it at some point saturates. On the other hand, if you are a proper, let's say, engineering graduate or something else, you start low, but then it goes up, you cross them. And in the long run, see, it's the area under the curve that matters, okay. And then probably you will see the benefit of that. So don't look at the slope, but look at a given instant of time of this curve, of your rate of return, rather the area under the curve, which will give you the benefit. I don't know whether, I don't have any other better answer.
Any other questions? One over there.
Oh, there is one from the student side, yes.
It was a great talk, sir. Especially I love the title of the talk, Staying Alive. So you talked about the data doubling time, which will increase over time, and by 2030s it will be like in 6 months we'll double the data. What concerns me, how reliable this new data is, because inevitably AI will be responsible for generating this new data, and eventually it will become like a snake eating its own tail, AI being trained on the data that is being generated by AI itself. So how do we solve this problem? One way I can think, like I'm from biology, so I can
You're from biology, okay, yeah.
I can experimentally validate this new data and this new information. I don't know how can we do it for other fields. One way I can think of is like making this new AI, which will go through this new data and validate which one is synthetic and which one is more reliable. New data being validating this new data. So how do you think we solve this problem?
So your concern is very genuine. Okay, I give you an example as a, from an engineering approach. So all of you have mobile, in your pocket, right? Let's say, and there is a communication. The channel, this is called, through which the data comes. Occasionally there are errors. Okay, so in your system there is something called your echo canceller or your equalizer, they call it, something to improve your rate of correct decision process. So what happens, there is something called decision feedback. It is a old classic, nothing to do with AI. Okay, so if normally your rate of the accuracy, it is already 0.95 or 0.99 or something, you can further improve. But if it is low, okay, don't feed it back because it can put you down. So you raise the same point that if you are feeding more and more erroneous data, okay, into your system, of course it will learn something wrong, right? I heard a case that once a young kid, uncle was a little naughty, I would say, and saying that in the morning it goes out and shows the sun and says, this is moon, okay, and in the night it says this is sun, okay. And it so happened that the young kid told his mother, oh, this is sun in the night. He says, who told you? Okay, so uncle told me like this. So as a young brain, look at this. So that's like somebody, of course, so it was like a more of a prank, okay. But if you give wrong data, it will learn something wrong, okay. So your argument is absolutely valid. So whether so before the feedback loop, so there is a need for data curation and all. This is very important, okay, that whether data is properly curated or not. If it is very erroneous, to some extent it can tolerate, but not something if it is too much. Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, we have we have kind of run out of time, unfortunately. So we'll have to take the further questions offline. But let's thank Professor Chaudhuri again for a wonderful talk, and as a token of our appreciation, I would request our director, Professor Jain Murthy, to hand over a small memento to Professor Chaudhuri.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. The next program will start in 10 minutes. There is refreshments outside, so please.